Hi Steve fans and welcome back. In this video I'm going to discuss one of the aspects of diving that I probably get quizzed about more than anything else. Air consumption. Or more specifically, how to increase your dive time by lowering the rate at which you empty your dive tank. There's no magical fix-all solution to this situation as there are so many factors involved, but I'll be sharing a few handy hints and advice which should see you able to extend your dive time and spend more time with the fishes. For those here for the first time, my name's Mark and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Scuba Diver media brand. And welcome to the Scuba Diver YouTube channel. Remember to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of our future videos, and ring that bell so that you get notification of the latest releases. Don't forget to check out below how you can get a free digital subscription to any of our magazines. That's Scuba Diver UK, Scuba Diver Australia and New Zealand, and Scuba Diver Destinations, which is our US and Canada edition. And if you want to get your hands on a print version, we've got a special subscription deal for our YouTube followers. Now, let's get into the video. How long can you dive on one tank is one question I get asked more than anything else. I have to say it's usually by a non-diver who is also asked, have you seen a shark? But I also get quizzed about air consumption by divers of all experience levels too. And I think that this is part of the problem. People get way too obsessed with how quickly they consume their air supply, and that fixation with how fast the needle drops on your SPG can override everything else on the dive. Now don't get me wrong, I totally understand the desire to not be the first person to signal the instructor or your dive buddy to say that you're at half a tank and need to turn the dive, or that you're at 50 bar and need to surface. But don't try to compete with other divers. Every single person has their optimum breathing rate, and yours might never attain their level whatever you do. It doesn't matter whether you're a newbie diver with a few hundred dives or an experienced diver with thousands of dives under your belt. The chances are that out there are going to be plenty of people who just don't use as much gas as you do. Believe me, I know. After over 37 years of diving around the world, I'm more than happy with my air consumption. I hit my optimum level about 25 odd years ago and it's remained much the same ever since. However, I was left feeling like I had the air consumption of a novice open water diver on one trip to the Maldives. We were doing 2 back-to-back channel dives, which basically involved us dropping down to 30 odd metres in a ripping current, fighting to get to the edge of the channel entrance, reef hooking in for about 20 minutes or so watching the sharks, and then finishing with a swift drift back to the dive boat. They were exciting, adrenaline fueled dives. Each dive ran approximately 40 to 45 minutes, and I got back on the boat from dive 1 with around 80 bar left in my Ali 80 cylinder. As I was swapping out my tank, so I had a fresh one ready for dive number 2 after our surface interval, I noticed our dive guide plonking her kit down in the corner and leaving it. I didn't think anything of it until a couple of hours later when we kitted back up to dive again. She just grabbed her gear and we went diving. Sure enough, on surfacing from dive 2, I had around 80 bar again. Once we were on board, I asked our guide how much gas she had left out of interest, and was frankly gobsmacked when she said 70 bar. She had done 2 full-on dives on 1 cylinder, and more incredibly, she was using a smaller Ali 63 tank. She was a very experienced Japanese instructor who'd been out in the Maldives for the better part of 20 years, so she was well used to this type of diving, and her incredible air consumption rate was also helped by the fact that she was absolutely tiny. To this day, I have never met anyone who has had an air consumption rate as low as she did. It was just mind-blowing. That said, there are some things you can do to aid your air consumption, and nailing these things will assist with helping you reach your own optimum breathing rate sooner rather than later. First up, get your weighting right. Nothing pushes up air consumption more than being overweighted. If you're overweighted 10 to 1, you will not be in a nice flat position in the water, so you'll be pushing through the water like this, which obviously requires far more effort and thus more gas. Even if you're able to get into that nice flat position when you're overweighted, your BCD is going to be inflated. So you're still going to be pushing more mass through the water. When you're correctly weighted, that is with the least amount that you can get away with, this reduced resistance will help your air consumption massively. I mentioned it before, but your actual body position in the water is vitally important. If you're in trim, in that nice flat position, so that you're streamlined to push through the water, you will use less gas than if you're finning along in an upright position like this. Basically, it's a case of moving around your weight positioning, how high low your tank is on your BCD, and your actual body position to be able to quickly and effectively get into that nice flat dive position. If you find your feet and legs are dropping down, try shifting your cylinder up a bit in your BCD tank bands, but not too high that you hit your head on the reg when you look up. If that isn't enough, try moving some of your weight. Trim pockets on the tank bands are handy for this. If you find your legs floating upwards, do the opposite. Move your tank down a bit, and if necessary, shift your weight as low as possible. It is all a delicate balancing act, and it takes practice. But once you hit that sweet spot, there's no looking back. As well as weighting and body position, your actual dive equipment can affect your air consumption as well. If you have a big bulky jacket style BCD or have lots of accessories dangling off you like a Christmas tree, then that is going to create more drag than if you have everything tucked away and are in a smaller, more streamlined rig, such as a back inflate BCD or a backplate and wing. If you're diving in warm waters, in a backplate and wing, or a BCD with no pockets, and you don't want your DSMB and spool, your torch, etc. hanging off your D-rings, get yourself some tech shorts, and then you can store all those accessories in the pockets. This keeps you nice and streamlined. So that's weighting, body position, and dive gear. Now the focus turns to you. Ideally, you'll be in a decent fit to dive shape, with good cardio and stamina. But if you're carrying a few extra pounds from being in lockdown, or you haven't been keeping your fitness level up to task, then get on your bike, go for a hike, dig out the rowing machine, or whatever. Your air consumption is never going to improve if you're panting like a winded dog after simply fighting your way into your wetsuit. I'm not suggesting you need to be Olympic athlete standard, but a decent level of general fitness will make a vast difference to your air consumption as well as being safer. The next thing to talk about is actual breathing. We all do it day in, day out, but when you're underwater, that nice smooth rhythm that we have on land goes right out the window. It doesn't help that we use our lungs as our primary buoyancy tool for fine adjustments when we're diving, and those extra inhalations and exhalations can further throw smooth breathing through a hoop. You can breathe however you want on land. It doesn't matter. We have a plentiful supply all round us. But when we are underwater, we have a finite supply in our cylinder. To help it last as long as possible, you want to develop a nice, smooth breathing action. My advice is to relax and try and get into a slow rhythm. Breathe in for a count of 3, and then breathe out for a count of 3 is a good starting point. Get nice and comfortable with this, and then move up to a count of 4. If you can get up to a count of 5 or 6, you'll be doing well. Don't get too fixated on the count though. Being nice and relaxed with your breathing is the main thing. Also bear in mind that there will be things that are out of your control. If you're diving in cold water, your air consumption will be more than if you were doing the same dive in warmer waters, as your body will be working harder to keep your core warm, which will push up your breathing rate. It doesn't matter if you're in the best undersuit and dry suit, with dry gloves and so on. Basic physiology can only be combated so far. Equally, if you're fighting against a current, deep down on a wall, or you're just having to work hard on your dive for whatever reason, then you will use more air than if you were simply cruising along a reef in the shallows. It's not just that you are physically more active and so having to pump more oxygen around your system. These sort of dives increase your mental workload more, and that will also push up your air consumption. Experience helps. Even when you're on a dive that more novice divers might consider quite full on, if you can find your zen place and stay relaxed, your air consumption won't suffer too much. My final piece of advice? I mentioned it before, but just don't get too hung up on air consumption. Diving is all about enjoying yourself underwater. And if you spend all your time below the surface stressing about how quickly you are using your gas, guess what? You'll only end up using it quicker. Plus, you are spoiling the whole reason that you're on the dive, whether that's on a wreck, on a reef, or whatever. enjoy your surroundings, and don't obsess over your SPG. You'll find as soon as you stop worrying about your air consumption, it will start to improve anyway. What are some of your hints and advice for improving your air consumption? Any neat tricks that you can pass on to your fellow divers? Leave your comments below, and if you have a question, fire away, because if we can't answer it, maybe someone in our community will be able to. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and don't forget that you can grab a free digital magazine subscription in the description below. As always, stay safe, and if you're one of the lucky people who live somewhere you're able to go out and dive, enjoy.